All right, so before I introduce today's speaker, um, I think you guys are going to enjoy this because I read an article he wrote several years back, and it was very interesting. I mean, I learned a lot, and there were things about salvage that I never knew were a part of salvage. So I think today's going to be really good. And I have enjoyed meeting Ed, and he has been very pleasant to work with so far. And we're going to get started in just a second here. So I hope everyone's ready and you have your pens and paper ready to take notes.
I like how you threw in there. It's a pleasure to work with him so far.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was hoping he would comment on that.
It was a pause, just that slight pause.
I was waiting for him to say something back. No.
Well, it's been short little interactions, so you don't know how the long one could go.
I think you would be pleasant to work with all the time. So, without further ado, Allied Salvors Incorporated was formed in 2000 by Edward Flanagan, a salvor in the Northeast since 1988. After graduating from Lycoming College in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, with degrees in political science and criminal justice, Mr. Flanagan began his salvage career with George M. Ruddy and Company in New York. He continued on to MF Bank and Company and eventually Stoner and Company, learning the salvage business from some of the top names in the industry before opening Allied Salvors. Mr. Flanagan has been certified as an expert witness in a number of courts regarding contents damage and valuation, and has been published in Claims Magazine on this subject. Please welcome Mr. Edward Flanagan.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I guess I share at this point.
Yes, sir.
All right. Here we go. First of all, thanks to Julie and Craig and CNC for getting me involved in this. I think this is great. I like the opportunity to speak to people about what salvors do, and just let them know about all the things we do other than, what you would expect, and that would be just to sell salvage. I've been a salver for about 32, 33 years now, and I remember, and I don't want to be that the old guy that says back in my day, but I think I am turning into that old guy in that back in my day when we started, when an adjuster had a loss involving any kind of stock, any kind of business, personal property, contents, first call would be to a salver, and we would go out there with them more times than not on the first inspection. And, when we did do that, we were able to get in early, but, over the times, over the years, it seems that either fewer people are being taught about what salvors do, or they just don't know or just don't care. But I find that if we are getting calls, a lot of times it's after the fact, and in a flood especially, if we get called weeks after the fact, it's very tough to really be able to do anything. But what do we do? In a nutshell, this is what we do. We do inventories, commercial and residential, inventory valuations, damage appraisals, temporary warehousing, asset protection in the marine cargo, and a couple other things. Hotel and office contents, we get involved as a contents expert, which, for years you would hear about someone getting a loss and they would say, I have this big loss. I have to get a building expert out there immediately. And you would do that, but there's the contents. They're just kind of sitting there. But where it may not be as much value involved as the building, it's a lot of money oftentimes. And you should address it quickly if you can. And of course, we sell distressed property. That's a given. Who do we work for? Adjusters, attorneys, accountants, restoration companies, and some self-insurers. But we have a variety of things that we do for a variety of different clients, and I'll kind of go over them a little bit. The salvage process, I like to call it. Ultimately, if you do things this way, it's going to work out perfect for you. It all starts with a phone call. Either way, you know, whether you're not sure about if there's going to be salvage, if you're not sure what to do, start with a phone call. Emergency protection, first aid. I'll explain some of these other ones as we go. Separation of stock, inventory preparation, assessing damage. It's all part of our process. As I said, it starts with a phone call. Get us involved early. Even if you're not sure if there's salvage, or sometimes if you're pretty sure there's not salvage, you should probably still call your salver. You know, it's not going to cost you anything just to call and kind of run it by them, let them know what you got and what they might be able to do to help you out. Emergency protection and first aid refers to just protecting the stock from further damage. Under the terms of the policy, of course, the insured has a duty to protect, but if they have a big hole in the roof, it's tough for them to do something, especially if it's a big supermarket or something. And we just try to do what we can just to save it. It could be as simple as putting some plastic tarps over some food in the grocery store just to keep it dry until we figure out what to do with it. Separation of damaged and undamaged property. You're not always going to know right up front what's damaged and what's not. It's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes it is. But, you know, more times than not, I come in or I get a phone call after the fact that says, you know, I was at this loss. It didn't look that bad. I left an inventory sheet with the insured, and then I got this inventory back. It's $150,000. And you know what? That's what happens when you leave it wide open. If you have someone looking out for what's going on, make sure it's current merchandise. And of course, that was going to happen. Excuse me, one moment. My apologies. So,
You might want to take that. It might be somebody calling for some salvage.
no, that's anyway. That's something I didn't anticipate. So, it's not always clear what's damaged, what's undamaged, and if you leave it wide open, the insurance gonna just take advantage of it in many occasions. If they have returns, they're gonna try to get rid of their returns. If you have someone looking out for you, even if they're not there 100% of the time, if they know someone's looking out for it, it's gonna be a little more honest. You know, you have a situation like this. Where you have a flooded basement, everything's not damaged in the basement, but you're going to need someone to go through it, make sure it's what it is, what you're paying for is what it's supposed to be. One of the most important things we do is the inventory. Your payment and the claim is based on what's inventoried, and you know, for the amount of money it would cost you to have a salver go out there for a little while. You know, one couch, if you pay a little bit too much money, you're gonna pay for the same amount of money. So just to have that. So ideally, you would have your salver get in there and do the inventory. You know, sometimes people have a third party come in and do an inventory, and then after they're done, they say, you know what, let's get a salver in there to look at the salvage. The problem with that is first of all, we don't know if the inventory is right coming in as a salver. And next of all, if you have someone in there doing an inventory and taking a week to do the inventory, and then calling us up and saying, you know what, we need to get rid of this stuff immediately, it's kind of tough for us to find a buyer for something if we haven't exactly examined it closely. If we're doing an inventory and we're touching it and feeling it and counting it and looking at it, we're going to get information as we do that. And it's going to be information that we could use to determine if it's old, if it's current stuff, if it's something that the insured might be able to just keep. It's more than just doing an inventory. It's all part of the process, as I say. There's a couple different kinds of inventory you can do. We have a full descriptive inventory if you need to know exactly what the manufacturer, make, and model of everything is, so you can figure out cost. We'll do a full descriptive inventory. It takes a little bit more time, but more times than not, we're going to be doing that with stuff that's very expensive, and it's probably worth the time to do it. A dollar and cent grocery inventory. Sometimes you only need to know a dollar figure, and we can very quickly go in and do quantities and retail prices just to get you a dollar figure. And from there, we will also do a few pages in inventory with descriptions that we would try to match up with invoices from the insured, so we could figure out what their markup was and turn that retail inventory number into a cost number. So sometimes the insured has an inventory, and ideally it's a perpetual inventory, which is a running inventory of what they have all the time. Sometimes they have a periodic inventory, usually taken at the end of the year. And really, depending on when the loss is, if it's close to the end of the year, sometimes you could use that to help out if needed. The third type of inventory that we see from the insured is none, which is quite often. And it's disturbing when they don't have one, especially when you walk into something like this. But you know, there's ways around that. With an out of sight loss, we can go in, we can inventory what is left, and use any kind of books and records to kind of recreate what the insured has purchased up to the time of the loss, and kind of do our best to determine the loss. Other types of inventories we do post-theft inventories, where it's the same process. You know, we would come in, we would inventory what's left, work with the accountants to determine what they had previously purchased versus what's left to try to figure out what got stolen. We do co-insurance inventories, where we would go in, we'd inventory the entire store, warehouse, manufacturing plant, whatever it might be, stock, fixtures, everything, just to make sure that the value that they're carrying is what they're supposed to be carrying. We do homeowner inventories. We don't do so much on the smaller scale, but if it's a big residential claim, we can do inventories for a homeowner claim and provide you with a RCV and ACV as you need it. Another part of what we do is just verifying value and what the loss is. As I was talking about the inventory, as we're doing the inventory, we get a chance to see in detail what the stuff is and what the extent of damage is, and what it's worth. And based on our knowledge, and we've obviously expanded our knowledge over the years based on just easy access to the internet in terms of finding values for things. So it's not always rocket science finding values for these things. I think the hard part is making sure that the values you're finding are the right ones in terms of like, kind, and quality. Just because you know you can buy a ladder, and it could be a cheap step ladder, and or it could be an expensive fiberglass ladder, or it could be a heavy duty fiberglass ladder, which you can go from $25 to whatever, $200 in that range. So you need to get a good inventory. You need to get accurate descriptions, and you can price out an inventory properly if you do it that way. And I mentioned earlier, sometimes you want to leave something with the insured. Maybe as we're going through, we decide, you know what, this stuff could be reboxed or cleaned, and the insured could sell it at a discount. Maybe something I might be able to just bring in a buyer and sell it for 15% of cost. We would work out a value and just leave it with the insured. A lot of times, adjusters make the mistake of saying, well, if the salvage value is 15%, I'm going to leave it to them with the salvage credit of 15%. Well, the problem with that, or the issue I have, is I think it's worth more to the insured. My buyer may pay 15%, but my buyer also has to come in and pick it up and spend money to transport it and then find a market for it. All these things that the insured already has. So to me, it's worth 15% more. So if I can sell it for 15%, it's got to be worth 30% to the insured. And we would write a report to that effect based on whatever it may be. So at the end, after we've done all the inventory, we figured out the values, and we've determined the insured doesn't want something. We have a salvage agreement. We sign the salvage agreement. Everybody agrees, the adjuster, the insured, and us, that we will sell it for whatever we can sell it for, and the net proceeds we will hold until it's decided who gets them. You may settle the loss and the insured gets the salvage at the end, or the insurance company gets the salvage, or whatever it might be. We usually try to sell things right from the site, so our buyer pays for all the loading and the shipping and everything to get the stuff out of there. And then we determine either we have a buyer in that field who we can negotiate a sale with, or if it's a big loss, we'll have a sealed bid sale. But we sell or have sold or can sell anything from computer equipment to clothing, shoes, furniture, rugs, manufactured homes, that's a flood loss, paper, building materials, that's another big flood loss we worked on, grains, machinery, equipment. I mean, I could go on and on forever. I don't want to bore you with all that, but that's some of the stuff we can salvage. You may have a situation where you just have damage to the building. The insured wants to keep his stuff, and maybe it needs to be moved to another location temporarily, or it needs to be recovered from under a roof that collapsed, and he can still keep it. And we can make arrangements to do all of that, where we would move it to secure location and keep it until the insured was ready to get it back. With residential losses, it's the same idea. We've done that as well, where we can pack out a residential loss and keep it in storage until need be. I'm going to just kind of show you a couple different examples of some losses that we've done and some of the different things we've done in these losses. This is a drywall distributor in Kansas. Had a tornado go through, and we were hired to handle the salvage, and as well to do a co-insurance inventory of some remaining buildings that they had in on site that were not damaged. So we went in there, did the inventory, and the insured expressed an interest in just keeping it. As I said, he had some other buildings there, so he was able to just move the stuff into another building. He bought it back for 25%. You had some of it was wet. It wasn't all soaking wet, but some of it was wet. He bought it back. You know, I probably could have sold it for maybe 15%. The issue we have with drywall is the value is not that high, and the expense in trucking it is high, just because look at the size of it, and you know you don't get all that much on a truck. And so, long story short, the insured decided he could use it, and we worked out a number. This was a sportswear store in Philadelphia, had a flood. This was unreal. This is a basement. It had 36 inches of water in it. And I think this is a view from the steps looking down, which it boggles my mind how they even got some of that stuff in there, or how they would get to it if they needed it. So I think this ended up being a SIU situation. So we got called in on this thing. Oh. It was a water main break, and the problem we had on this one is it was about 3 weeks until anybody actually called us to come in and inspect it. I think they were probably overwhelmed looking at it. And the problem that caused is all the water that was down there just pretty much got soaked up by all these boxes and merchandise. So we were able to pull off a small layer off the top of this that was dry, but everything else, as you lifted the box, it just fell apart. It was a 6,000 square foot basement, and it was packed just like this all the way around. And what kind of inventory do you think the insured had? You would guess right if you guessed none. So we went through. I mean, you can see how bad this stuff is. It was moldy. It was a mess. We did an inventory, pulled off some of the dry, brought it out, and just bagged it up a little at a time. Some of the stuff we could salvage, some was trash, but in either case, we had to take it out in trash bags because the boxes would fall apart when you lift them. And the only way out was this little conveyor belt thing, which didn't work, by the way. We had to push the stuff up. So that was nice too. But got a big crew, separated it out. We got an inventory. A lot of the stuff was closeout merchandise that this guy bought in bulk. And we found a lot of used shoes, but some of the stuff went in the trash. Some of them went in a U-Haul to our buyer. And ultimately, we did get it cleaned out. But that was a true salvage operation, straightforward. Yeah, it was a mess. At this garment manufacturer in New Jersey. And we walked into this. It was 600 dozen partially completed garments. And basically the insurer just wanted to dump it. And he said he could get dumpsters and he needed it out of there. And you know, why would you call a Salvor at that point? You could just throw it away. and you know, it's probably not a bad idea to try to do some kind of verification of the inventory. In this situation, it might not be that realistic for us to check actual quantities, but you know what? If you have someone on site, they're a little less likely to exaggerate the quantities than not. But also, even when you think it should be done, call your salver. In this case, we found a guy that made rags basically, and we got rid of it. We didn't get a huge salvage recovery, but you didn't have to pay to dump it, and we got rid of it, and we were able to comfortably say that the quantity that they said was there was actually there. So recently, this summer, in fact, we had plenty of these losses, civil unrest. This is a beauty supply store. And again, you know, coming into that, why do you need a salver? I mean, what are they going to do? Well, a couple things. You know, we did an inventory of what was left. And there was a lot of trash because it got stampeded and crushed and everything. But we did get some salvage out of it, things that just couldn't be put back on the shelves. And what we did was we worked along with the accountants for the insurance company. We did our inventory of what was left, both on the floor as a total loss and what was left up on the shelves and everything else. And we gave that to them, and they were able to come up with some kind of number based on the insured's end of year inventory on what was stolen during this thing, which you can tell every wig was stolen off of every head in the place. So it was a monumental job, but it's something. It's an easy way, a way that we can help to determine the amount of a loss in a theft situation. This is a sporting goods store. We actually had 12 of these stores located in New York and Philadelphia. All of them were looted, some less than others. But in all cases, we inventoried what was left in the stores, both on the floor, which is what we would salvage, and the stuff on the racks we inventoried as well. And they did have perpetual inventory records up until the date of the loss. So we were actually, I think, able to come fairly close to what they lost in there, what was stolen. And we did get some salvage recovery out of the stuff that we took for salvage. As you can see, the back stock room of this place, they just rifled right through it. Most of these are empty boxes on the floor. They obviously didn't need the box; easier to carry it out. But there's some sneakers mixed in under there, so we had to bag them all up, take them out, and match up what we can just to try and get some salvage out of them. There's a ladies' shoe store with the same idea. You know, we inventoried what was left. In this case, there was not that much left, but you know, we did what we could in terms of trying to figure out what they lost. Most of these display shoes are just what you see, just display single shoes. A number of years ago, we held a tornado loss in Alabama. And it was huge. It had $8 million worth of stock in the warehouse. Initially, the insured thought, maybe 1.2 million might be damaged. We were called in for the insurance company just to work along with them as they went through and just pulled out all the stock, and they anything that was good they moved to one warehouse, and anything that was bad they moved to another area here by the lost site. Ultimately, it ended up just being a $210,000 loss. Once they went through everything and that stuff wasn't all that damaged. And we were able to sell some salvage at the end of it. And a good reason we were able to sell the salvage for what we got is because once they started going through it and doing their evaluation, we started looking for buyers. We didn't get a call after the fact that said, look, we have a warehouse full of these tire and truck wheels, truck and tire wheels. Can you see if you can find a buyer? It took us a little time to find a buyer, but we did that while they were going through the process of separating. And you know what? Ultimately, I don't know if the loss would have ended up at 200,000 if we were there or not, keeping an eye on them. But you know what? It didn't hurt all that badly, and I think it ended up working out. Also, a number of years ago, we did a large flood loss in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. It was a modular home manufacturer. The entire plant got hit. It was raw materials, finished goods, work in process, the whole deal. So we had $1.5 million worth of stuff to sell: building materials, finished homes, and both. We divided it up into categories. We had plumbing fixtures and showers and things like that. We had lumber, siding, roofing, you name it, everything part of our house, we had it. Windows, doors. And we got a pretty good recovery, being able to break it down into lots just like that. As I said, we got over 50% for a lot of these things, including these modular homes, which weren't easy to sell, but we did sell them, and it worked out nicely. Something else we do, we get involved with business personal property content or losses as content experts. And that involves doing the inventory, figuring out what got damaged, just like all the other ones, but also controlling the stuff that is not damaged. So in this particular case, we got called to this hotel fire. And we were able to conduct an inventory of what was damaged, what was lost, identify the total lost rooms. Actually, you can see how old this was. Look at the TVs. And at the same time, identify those rooms that were not damaged, and we'll work with the restoration company on site to secure all the stuff that was not damaged, because at some point they're going to go in there to do remediation, and this stuff is all going to end up in the middle of the room with a tarp over it, and it's going to ultimately be rendered a total loss. So before that happens, let's identify what got damaged, what did not get damaged, let's secure it, and let's do something with it. So I zipped through that pretty quickly. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I never really timed it out, so I didn't know how it was going to work out. But that's kind of all I have. But I'll review what anyone might want to have reviewed.
Yes, actually, we do have some questions. Julie, do you have any questions that came over to you? Okay, we lost Julie. All right, but we do have some questions. Let's see here. I know Wendy said she had some questions, and I'm just going to unmute her and let her ask them. It's just a little easier. It's a little easier that way.
That'll work.
All right, Wendy, you are up.
Hello. Okay, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
I'm good,
Thanks
Wendy.
for coming. We're so happy to have you here. It was a great presentation. And I do have a couple questions, but I wanted to make a couple of comments also. From time to time, we have subject matter experts just like yourself. I like to come in and clarify for our audience, for our adjusters, a couple of comments that translate exactly to how we handle things for flood with our carriers. And one of them was, we're always talking about salvage in terms of whether or not we can recover with anything for the carrier, but your inventory services are really important. I'm glad you spoke a lot about that. We have to remind our adjusters that we can ask for a salvage company in terms of assisting with evaluating a very large inventory, regardless of whether there may be salvage value down the road. We do have the ability to request this under FEMA, so I'm glad you were talking more about your inventory services today. That can be of more use to us if we look for those opportunities. The second thing is, you mentioned salvage agreements, that when there's an agreement about the salvage, that the adjuster and the insured sign an agreement. I just want to make sure our adjusters know that we don't sign anything. Our carrier has to sign that salvage agreement. So you would get that agreement. Allied would provide us with an agreement, and then we would need to get that to the carrier for their authorized personnel to sign. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then you also had a slide about that really large claim with the basement contents. It's pretty, it'd be fair to say that a lot of adjusters may have tuned out as soon as you say the word basement, because there's limited coverage in basements for contents. But I want to remind our adjusters that we also handle private flood, and it's very possible that we have endorsements that provide coverage in a basement for contents. So don't automatically discount that a basement can provide us with some opportunities for coverage depending on which carrier we're working for. But the question I have for you is about fees. We have this really chicken or the egg situation with our carriers. When we want to ask for salvage support, carrier wants to know what's the potential salvage value and what's this going to cost us. And we also know that you can't really give us that information until you have some kind of preliminary knowledge of the claim. So I wanted to know how do you deal with this up front? If we gave you a call, but we don't necessarily have authorization to hire you, how can you help us bridge that gap so that the carrier is comfortable with authorizing your services?
Good question. Real quick, jumping back, as far as this salvage agreement goes, I said the adjuster, but more times than not, the adjuster has to go to the carrier to get a signature. So you were right. Yeah. But no, as far as the cost goes, if I can get a basic idea of what the loss is and what you're asking for, I usually try to just do it on a per day basis. If you have a loss that I think just may take a day to do an inventory, I try to just give a rough number based on how many people I think. If I can get a couple photos, I can at least let you know that, you know what, I'm not going to get all that much money for you in the end, but or it is going to be a good salvage situation, and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to do an inventory. You're right. It's hard for me to say without actually being there and seeing what it is, but more times than not, I can give you kind of a ballpark of what we're expecting.
That's great. One thing we're trying to do is bring the topic of salvage further to the beginning of our claims adjusting process for especially for commercial claims. And if we had the opportunity to call you in just for a quick first consultation, can you do that without a fee so that we can show you what we know and then get you to give us some kind of an estimate, or, ballpark, because a lot of times our carriers are asking for that.
Yeah.
So
I get that all the time. I'm not against doing that, getting some pictures. I mean, if I'm not flying on a plane to just look at something so you can tell me I can't work on it, that's that's a whole
no,
different
I don't.
but
Of course not. We're not going to ask you that.
no, but a phone call and then a couple photos of what you're dealing with. More times than not, I can say, look, I think we can do this in X amount of days and for this amount of money. And I think there's salvage potential in this part of it, or there's really no salvage, but you might want to just get the inventory to get it documented. I can tell you all that stuff, and then more or less give you a number that it's going to cost you, and then once we get to the loss and start working on it on day one, then we call right away and say, wow, this is more than I expected. It's or not. So
Yeah.
but yes, it's
So we
all
want to
free.
remind you.
That's all free.
That's all free. Okay, good. Well, we want to remind the adjusters too that you keep in mind that if you do have what appears to be a bunch of worthless stock on the ground, don't make that immediate assumption. But keep in mind that if they come in and can do no more for us than bringing a crew to remove all of the property, if they have contents coverage and no other limitations, we might be looking at a debris removal allowance, which is, of course, another coverage that's under the policy. So just if you walk into a store full of items, automatically think of salvage and get in touch with us so that we can try and engage these experts earlier and much more often than we do currently. So that's all the questions I have. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you for the time, Craig.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Wendy, thank you. I believe we lost Julie. She's having some difficulties, and I am actually having some video difficulties. So she just messaged me and said she was completely out, but she is showing up on the screen. So anyway, let's see here. I think there was one more question, but I believe it just was actually kind of answered with what Wendy and you were discussing about the process for Salvor. Wendy mentioned we don't make the decision to approve a Salvor. That actually has to go through our carriers for them to make that decision. So I believe that kind of was answered there. So don't see any more in the chat box. So again, thanks, Ed. We greatly appreciate your time and insight into the kind of the world of salvage and how our duty as an adjuster can help you and your crew get the most value out of salvage opportunities, but in the reality also greatly, help the policyholder through a difficult process in a lot of cases. You gave a good example. You showed a couple of good examples like the drywall, but the one that really kind of caught my attention was the one with all the boxes, just the stacks and stacks and stacks of boxes, and a policyholder has a situation where those floods, what do they do? It's kind of a shock to them, and getting your involvement on the inventory, at an early stage. And that's kind of, one of the things we push is for an adjuster to identify that early in the process. So we're not losing any spoilage of the salvage. We're getting the most value, but also there's those opportunities out there that can benefit the policyholder, can help the policyholder through that difficult process of recollecting their lost items and really helping go through the process of inventorying it. So it was good to see that, because I know in the past I dealt with one very similar where there was billions of widgets. I mean, just boxes of boxes, and you kind of walked in and you go, what do we do? So well, we know what to do. We reach out and we get a Salvor involved. We get the Salvor involved to help with that inventory process as well. So
yeah, you're right. You're right. Your insured gets overwhelmed with something like that. They still want to run their business, and then when you say to them, well, get me an inventory of what's damaged, and a lot of times that just pushes them over the edge.
Absolutely.
How am I going to do that? So even if we don't do the whole thing ourselves, you know, we get in there. Maybe they have a system where we can scan it or something. But no, he's not thinking about that immediately. He's just, how am I going to do this? And then you know, at least we get in there, try to get a handle on it, and try to guide him in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, again, Ed, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Just a few quick announcements for everybody. Don't forget, and I know Julie mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, don't forget to check out our training calendar on our webpage, adjustingexpectations.com. We have, you know, a lot of classes that we list up there, that new classes. It's consistently changing with what we have up there. I know we have some ability classes, RC BAT, GP, CNC claim specific handling classes. These are a lot of the classes that we offer for both our property and flood adjusters. So get on there, check them out, register today if you can, for these free classes, because there is limited seating for these classes. We also are doing our transition to Xactimate X1 Level 2 certification program that's active right now. Some of you have probably gotten some posts. I've seen some of our posts. Some of you probably actually have talked to some people from our RDL team. We're putting these classes together weekly. We're putting weeknights, weekdays, weekends. We got all these classes that are going on. So we have a lot of choices for these classes to choose from, for y'all to get out there and choose from them. Because, you know, we're moving from we're moving from 28. 28 is being sunset this year. We're moving to X1 Level 2. And a lot of reasons why we're doing this is because a lot of our clients are moving to this. You know, some of our are requiring Level 2 certification as part of their service level agreement. So we don't want you to miss out. We don't want you to miss out on these opportunities to get this training while it's really readily, easily available for everybody to jump on that. So, and if you already have your X1 Level 2 certification, that's fantastic. Let our RDL team know that you have it so they can mark it into your profile, that you don't have to worry about that. And if you know somewhere where you can go out and get it, get it. Get it as soon as possible. You don't want to miss out on that. One last thing, any updates on your state license and any information about your 2021-22 NFIP card, let our RDL team know that you have it so you can forward that information to us as well. So, and as always, we record these sessions so that you have an opportunity to jump back in later on and take and look at one of the training sessions or one of these episodes that we actually do for Flood News at noon. Here is the YouTube channel, but to make it a little bit easier, if you just go to www.youtube.com and type in CNC Catastrophe and National Claims under the channel, it'll bring you up right to that page. Not only do we have these Flood News and Noon episodes, but we have other blogs and other information that we post out there for you all for your enjoyment. So when you're sitting around and bored at home and you want to find out more about what Ed said about salvage, you can jump on that this broadcast. You can watch it, this episode. You can watch it again. And if anytime you have any questions related to any of these presentations, anything that we do training-wise or anything like stuff like that, please feel free to reach out to me at Craig Fowler, well, not at Craig Fowler, but Craig Fowler at cnc-resource.com. Again, Ed, thank you for your time. Greatly appreciate coming on and giving us perspective on salvage and salvors and your perspective. And with that, everybody, we will see you again in 2 weeks. Y'all have a fantastic week. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.